Welcome to Small Arms Solutions. Many of you are familiar with I don't know what the best word is to do, but the complete screw-up of the XM17 program. The fact that we still went with a 9mm pistol, they eliminated the proper trials. They don't know which gun was better because they never tested it. Plus all the current issues they're having with the XM17, the SIG P320, where we're still working out a lot of bugs because, again, it wasn't tested. Before the XM17 program was released, it was very clear what the requirements were going to be for this new pistol. Beretta, who is a current manufacturer, could offer new weapons as a weapons improvement. Not necessarily have to have the requirements out, but they could submit, an update of their firearm. And they had a very well thought out plan of a better way to save the government a lot of money, save logistical issues, and stay with a proven handgun system. And what that was referred to as the M9A3. Now, the M9A3 is not a U.S. government term. The M9 is a U.S. government term. The M9A1 is a U.S. government term. Was manufactured for the Marine Corps, which we will get to that. But what their idea was to introduce a new pistol, which is the M9A3 pistol. And what that was going to do was it was going to have most of the requirements that the U.S. government requested. The modularity and so forth. In fact, it meant over 80% of what those requirements were. But not only did it offer those improvements, but it offered the ability to take an existing pistol, such as an M9, and upgrade it to the M9A3 configurations. So you could take any M9 that's currently in inventory, you could update the components to the new configuration. Now, if you notice, you have the M9, M9A1, and M9A3. Well, there's also an M9A2, which we're going to get to also, which was another integral part of the Beretta program, was being able to retrofit the frames of the M9 pistols with the 1913 rails, which again, we're going to get to that in a few minutes. What we're going to talk a little bit about right now is just the history going from the M9 to the M9A1, what happened in a sequential order to where we were at today. Just maybe, since we're going with a 9mm pistol, this might have been a better option for the U.S. government, because they certainly would have stayed with a pistol that had a much more proven record and had it and worked. There's no question about it. It's fit, its function. It had an excellent reputation while it was in. The biggest problems the M9 ever dealt with was lack of maintenance and let's say substandard replacement parts from second, third, and fourth echelon manufacturers outside of Beretta, people who didn't know how to properly make the parts. During that testing of over 75,000 rounds, the mean rounds between failures of the M9 pistol was 18,750 rounds, which is pretty damn incredible. I would love to see what the current P320 would offer with that kind of a round count. We don't know because it's never been done. But this was actual testing that was done at Beretta USA with the U.S. government representative there with randomly selected firearms. So that shows the degree of reliability that the M9 has always offered. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the current M9 pistol. This pistol has been in service since 1985. It's gone through a couple changes. Not necessarily because of its own fault, but due to some other government fuckery, if you want to say. The first issue that we all know about it was the slide failures. Well, the slide failures, there's been a lot of people who've said that it was just there were failures in the metallurgy and all that kind of stuff, which was none of it was true. The reality of the slide failure problems had nothing to do with the pistol itself. It had to do with ammunition, M9A3 ball ammunition that was made improperly by Winchester. The Winchester failed to change the load based off of the fact you're using a 9x19 NATO cartridge case versus a commercial cartridge case. And what that did was it increased chamber pressures and it increased it right up to near proof pressures. So those first lots of ammunition, you were firing basically proof loads. And there's no alloy frame gun or even steel frame gun that was designed to take that kind of abuse. So that's what caused the relatively few slide failures that had happened. In fact, once that came to light, Beretta sued the U.S. government because of the damage to their reputation for their M9 pistol's durability. Because this never happened anywhere else but the U.S. military, which specifically was some Navy SEAL units where this happened. So the U.S. government paid Beretta quite a bit of money. And also the addition of the new slide capture feature. The government decided rather than to try to dispose of all ammunition and find out what ammunition it was, they would equip the pistols so if this was to happen again, it would not be dangerous. and we're going to show you very quickly what exactly that was. We have two slides here. The first slide was the original slide, and if you can see on there, it says M9 Pietro Beretta, or P Beretta. When it says P Beretta, that's an indication that this slide was made in Italy, where now you have a current issue US M9 slide that says Beretta USA. So that tells you where each one was made. Well, looking at the bottoms, we're going to see what the difference is. So shown here is the original M9 slide, and over here it was the improved M9 slide with the anti-slide failure safety on it. If you notice this area right in here, you can see where you have a valley cut into here. You don't on here. Well, that along with a new hammer trigger pin, the hammer trigger pin would ride in that channel, and if that was to fail, this hammer pin would catch the slide so it could not exit out the rear of the slide. Now, because this was not a fault of the Beretta pistol, Beretta USA made sure that the U.S. government paid for this. It paid for retrofits on existing M9 service pistols, as well as the changeover in the tools to make the larger hammer trigger pin for use with this. I want to emphasize that the issues that were found were not due to the pistol. It passed all metrology tests. Everything was proper. The issue was ammunition related. It was not submachine gun ammunition used by the SEALs. This was actual M82 ball ammunition that was made to the improper specifications. So this was the first major change. Another issue that we have is the locking block itself. The locking block, I don't know if you want to call it the weak link of the M9 pistol. The M9 locking block was prone to fail at higher round counts. Now, we have the original locking block as you've seen right here. You can see how this is all, these edges here are all straight. This is the one, as you can see here, that failed. This was the original locking block. It probably had a service life, I'd probably say around 10,000 rounds or so, maybe a little bit less. Well, then Beretta went and upgraded it and made a major change to it. As you can see, a relief cut that was manufactured right in through here. This took a lot of the stress off of this part of the area around where the locking block, the locking lugs were. And this vastly increased the safety. I bet you I would say 17 to 18,000 rounds. Then came the third generation. Now the difference between the second and third generation was additional meat, if you would. Notice the generation 2, you had the same size surface in here for the plunger that's used to unlock in the pistol. Well, you can see how this is much narrower. So what you did was you increased the tensile strength on this one as well, which this also required a change in the plunger itself. We go from the standard plunger to the narrower plunger. This was a major enhancement for as far as reliability was concerned. I would definitely say this would give you well over 20,000 plus in durability. But this was the main issue that you would see. And this was also the main issue that caused this was the fact that they went with a second and third source for production of these for spare parts from companies who did not know what they were doing. They weren't heat treating them properly, and they were breaking. Majority of the ones that were breaking, especially towards the later part of the global war on terror, these were not Beretta manufactured locking lugs. These were somebody else's. And these substandard components would hurt many weapons programs, including the M9, M16, M4 system as well. Now, another change has been in the magazines themselves. You have your original M9 pistol magazine. You had it was a steel body with a aluminum follower. This was the initial model here, and these worked quite well. Then came the Checkmate. This was the second source, manufactured not by Beretta. This one here is not a perfect example of the one that caused the problems, but an earlier Checkmate magazine, they used a manganese phosphate type finish on it. And what that finish did was it was very porous and it would hold sand. And it would cause malfunctions in the M9 pistol that were not found with the Beretta magazines. So many units, what they would do is they would leave these ones back in the armory, and they would take the original GI magazines, the original Beretta magazines. They did not have that problem with these. Now the problem was eventually corrected with Checkmate to have a proper finish on it, but a major problem with reliability had to do with that magazine that was manufactured outside of the OEM, who did not know what they were doing. Then comes along the M9A1 program, which introduced a new magazine, which was the same kind of a body with a new type of a finish on it, which was geared towards reliability in the desert. It's sort of a nickelish type finish. And the magazine also had a polymer follower instead of a aluminum follower. Now, these were procured with the M9A1 pistols. Now, the M9A pistols were COTS pistols. They were not TDP pistols. So, unlike the U.S. government issue M9, the COTS pistols did not have to conform to the TDP, so you could take all of the enhancements off of the second and third generation Beretta improvements. So your M9A1s, unlike the M9s, would have the updated locking block. It would have the updated magazine. It would have some other updated components in there as well. But they were free to do that because they were commercial off-the-shelf guns and not TDP guns. Now, there were also some contracts with the Beretta M9 that were commercial off-the-shelf. Even though they were marked the same way as a standard M9 pistol, they were still COTS. They could still get those improved components. And the current magazine you see here is the M9A3 magazine. This is a 17-shot magazine instead of a 15-shot magazine. This was introduced as part of the M9A3 program, which is one of the things that the U.S. government wanted, was a 17-shot magazine. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go over the pistols. Again, we have the standard M9 U.S. government pistol. This was the basic pistol, all TDP. It had all the original parts on it that were required for the TDP. Now, the Marine Corps, on the other hand, had some issues with the M9, and they required some changes. First off, they wanted a 1913 rail, as you can see right here. And what that would allow them to do was to put flashlights. So what we're going to do now is we're going to put an Olight Mini on it. What we have here is probably the smallest LED 400 lumen tactical flashlight in the industry. I've been quite impressed by them. I'm anxious to get them out to the range and start shooting and see how they hold up. That was one major improvement. The second had a lot to do with the grips. If you compare the M9 pistol to the M9A1, you'll see you have much more checkering on the M9A1. Much easier to hold on to when your hands are sweaty or muddy or have any kind of a slippery material on them. So that's the back. And when we look at the front, we have the same thing. Much more aggressive, much easier to control, to handle. The next big improvement they wanted was an improved trigger guard. Now, they felt that the trigger guard was too weak on the standard M9 pistol. I think they wanted it more for, if you want to say, compliance, if they had to hit somebody with it so it wouldn't bend. So they required this to be much sturdier. Those were the main improvements that you would see on the M9A1 pistol. If you look at the markings on the pistol, the top is the M9 Beretta. You'll have the U.S. government marks on it, and below is the M9A1. They have commercial marks on it. Again, it's not a TDP M9 pistol. It's a commercial off the shelf, so it doesn't require having those markings on them. But many of the M9A1s you will see have some of the proof marks on them. Sometimes you'll see the PM on the side indicating the slide was submitted to the magnetic particle and proof testing. The barrel, the locking block would have the PM on them as well. But for the most part, you have a basic commercial off-the-shelf pistol that came directly with this new sand magazine. It was designed for use in the desert, 15-shot. So now we move forward to the M9A3. This was the pistol that Beretta had submitted to the U.S. military prior to the XM17 release as a product upgrade. Now what you see here, it looks basically like an M9 pistol. We're going to go over some of what the changes were. First and foremost, it had to be this coyote tan color or flat dark earth or whatever you want to call it. Also, it had a removable front sight. This pistol came with night sights. So what we have here is the first time Beretta has a factory threaded barrel for use of a sound suppressor. I've shot this pistol suppressed on many occasions. Absolutely no problem whatsoever. Put that back on there. So you have a removable front sight. You have a high profile rear sight. The next major thing we're going to see is the safety itself. Many people had complained with the standard M9 pistols that when you would go to pull back on the slide, that you could accidentally put the safety on because of the way your hand would grab around it. Beretta listened to that issue on the M9A3, and as you can see, the angle has been changed on the slide-mounted safety. You can see that instead of being parallel like the M9 and M9A1, where it's actually up more of an angle, it's allowing you to get your finger underneath there without having to worry about activating the safety when you pull the slide back. Major improvement. Now, also, they wanted a modularity for as far as hand size. Setup with here is for the narrower hands, you have the smaller grip panels. For those of us with larger hands, you would just remove those screws and put on this Hogue wraparound, which would greatly enhance, the feel of the pistol for as far as somebody with bigger hands being more comfortable with it. And that could be done at the user level. You also have an improved magazine release. For someone like myself, I would have no problem hitting the magazine release without having to change the grip angle on my hand. Now, somebody with smaller hands, I don't know if they would have that problem or not. But that was another one of the changes that was done. Again, we showed the M9A1 style 1913 rail, M9A1 style improved trigger guard. Now we're going to take a look in the inside. They utilize a polymer spring guide. Many people would claim that this was Beretta getting cheap. You know what? No, it wasn't, because the reality is this spring guide is not a part that gets heat. It's not a strenuous part at all. It doesn't keep this spring in line. So there's no decrease in quality by going with the polymer spring guide. Most importantly, this utilizes the newest generation locking block, which has the relief cuts as well as the smaller pin, plunger. So you have all the benefits of having a stronger locking block. Now, on the inside, all the parts that you see in here are all interchangeable with the M9 pistol. So what their thought was, we're going to make sure that all the major components are interchangeable, so you don't have an issue with the logistical end of it. You already have the people who are trained. There's no additional training that goes into the armors, and you can keep all your additional parts the same. You're not changing out your inventory. Now comes the M9A2, which we have not heard of. Now, what the M9A2 was a conversion process. And what that would do is it would take an existing M9 pistol in its current configuration, its TDP configuration, and it would allow you to take that pistol and convert it over to the new M9A3 configuration. So basically what you would do is you would have a separate component, 1913 rail, that you would be able to weld to the frame. So it would allow you to have the original pistol with the 1913 rail in the front. And then you have the ability to take the original slide or replace the slide. If you replace the slide, you would be able to have the removable front sight. If you kept the slide, it would still be your standard fixed. And you'd be able to paint, cerakote, coat, whatever you're going to do, the initial one. Now, for as far as the frame was concerned, all the parts are interchangeable. You could swap out just the safety, so you could have the new safety on there. For as far as the grip was concerned, the grip, you'd be able to use these thinner grip panels as well. So it would allow you to take your current fleet and convert them over. Even having the issue with the M9A2 being able to do all that full conversions over, the military looked at it and still said, no, we want to look at a new pistol program. Now, Beretta could not submit the M9A3 because it was not 100% compatible with what they required for as far as the modularity is concerned. Now, in the end, this incredibly cheap price that SIG gave, Beretta couldn't even meet that doing this. However, it was still significantly under, a new replacement program for instance, like the Glock or some of these other weapons. It still would have been less expensive. For as far as a 9mm pistol, something tells me this might have been a better way to go than going with another handgun, because you're not seeing any additional reliability or durability for the most part out of this new pistol that we have. You have a completely new setup of parts. You have a complete new requirement for training armorers to use it. I think the Army looked over this way too quickly. Beretta had a very viable solution if you were going to stay with a 9mm. And that's really how I feel about it myself, too, is if you were going to stick with a 9mm pistol, I don't believe there's any pistol out there that's going to give you that much more over what the M9 does. We had to correct the issue with the parts that were not manufactured to the same specifications that the Beretta ones were. That was a major issue, and I said it before in this video, the fact that the U.S. government has screwed up a lot of weapons with cheap parts that are not made properly per TDP, and then claiming that the weapon system is faulty. The current situation that we're in with the P320, I think this definitely would have been a better option than the P320. I do not believe that the P320 is going to offer any further reliability or durability enhancement over this pistol. It's already been shown right now with some of the issues that the M17 has had. issues that this one does not have. This one here, you can drop, throw, you can smack the hammer with a hammer. It's not going off. The way the firing pin block works on this thing, plus with the manual safety on it, it's physically impossible no matter what you do to get this thing to go off. It's completely drop safe. You know, it has all the major features for as far as the ambidextrous, except for it does not have the ambidextrous slide release. That's probably one of the 20% that it didn't meet was the slide release. It did have a manual safety, and like everything else, it did have a reversible magazine release. The ability to have the suppressor on it, the suppressor capable, was really a big deal. Beretta had not really offered that for a long time. If you wanted to have a sound suppressor on an M9 pistol, you had to buy an aftermarket barrel that was not made by Beretta. But these barrels are still chrome-plated military-grade barrels. And with the M9A2, you can swap the barrel out right with it to give it that capability. You know, the M9A2, there was never actually any made. It was on paper. I thought that it was an excellent idea, being able to utilize the inventory that we currently had. But evidently the Army in its infinite wisdom did not think so. The M9A3 has gone on to be offered as a commercial weapon. So you can buy one of these. It does come with you know, the new 20 or new 17 round magazines. It does come with the 2 grips. This is an actual commercial version right here. We do have one of our patrons that loaned this to me. I want to thank him very much and apologize to him for taking so long. I've had this thing for quite some time. But I thought this was a very important program to talk about because I do think Beretta put through a very reasonable and a very well thought out plan to utilize existing inventory and save money and keep parts compatible, especially with as little as the handguns are used. But at the same time, with offering this less expensive opportunity for the M9 pistol, you would not be degrading the reliability of the pistol by going with something new that you have not tested, not knowing how it works. The P320 has not even been tested against an M9 pistol. That's something else that's extremely sad about it too, is you want to replace something that you say is old and aging, but you don't even compete against it. You know, given the the number of the 18,750 rounds mean round between failure that the M9 has demonstrated with our government inspectors in Accokeek, Maryland, I would really like to see if the P320 is up to par to do that. That is an extremely high round count. I believe Glock probably would meet that, but I don't know if the P320 would. It doesn't matter that I don't know. It's the fact that the Army doesn't know that is the problem. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave me a comment. I'll try to get back to you on it. This is a very important program. It's one that most of you guys will not know about because it was stopped by the Army pretty quickly without even really being considered. So if you have any questions, again, please feel free. If you enjoyed this video, please click like, please subscribe, and even better, share. Thank you.